Hello, and welcome back to the channel. All right, you guys, it's some of your favorite monthly series where I talk about the books I read last month and what I thought about them and what I'm planning on reading next month. Now, I'm a book girly and I read a lot of books, but I think I may have outdone myself in February. As you may remember, I had the stomach flu and the norovirus and it sucked. But it meant I spent a lot of time laying around recovering. And so I had a lot more time to read than I usually do. And I ended up reading 10 books in February, which is like double what I usually maximum read in a month. Yeah, it's a lot. So let's just get into it. Oh, actually, I will say I posted a little bit about what I was reading while I was sick on my Instagram story this month. And I posted about how there were a couple books I wanted to read that were on the Libby app that were not going to be available for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And I got some great tips from you guys. So I actually wanted to take this opportunity to share a few little Kindle reading hacks. If you're a Kindle person like me, I read books on Kindle through the Libby app, which hooks up to my local Los Angeles library card. As a result of being in LA, such a big city, as you can imagine, the wait periods for a lot of popular books are extremely long. And I was kind of griping about that on my Instagram story, and I got a lot of great responses saying that you can, on the down low, if you have friends that live in other cities, hook their library cards up to your Libby app and get on the wait list for libraries that may have more copies or shorter lines. I haven't actually done that physically yet, but I thought it was a great tip. So if you're out there frustrated with Libby wait times, maybe that's helpful for you. Okay, let's get into these books, you guys. Like I said, I read 10, and I think nobody's going to be surprised to hear that the very first one I read is Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, the third book in the Empyrean series, the follow-up to Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I mean, this is probably my most anticipated book, maybe since like I was a little kid and the Harry Potter books were coming out. Like Fourth Wing feels like my adult Harry Potter obsession, right? Back when I was a kid, I used to go to Barnes & Noble at midnight for the midnight book releases. I would have absolutely done that if that was a thing. Maybe it was a thing and I don't know. But anyway, I was very excited when Onyx Storm came out. I ended up having to put off reading it because life was getting in the way, and so I didn't read it right when it came out in January, but I did eventually get around to it in February. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame are 5 out of 5. Fourth Wing being one of my favorite books I've read as an adult. So I think that there's a lot of that just like love for the overall series and the characters that is driving that 4.5, because overall I felt like this book fell a little flat compared to the first two. I did still really, really like it. I think a lot of the love for it was driven by my already established love for the series in general. This book being the third book in what will eventually be a 5-book series, definitely felt like a midpoint. It felt like she had a lot of information that she needed to lay the groundwork for, that is maybe not like the most exciting or interesting, but like had to be out there so that I'm assuming when she does this like grand finale in the last 2 books, all of the information that she sort of seeded in here pays off. Now, maybe I'm giving the author way too much credit. I just know that I really appreciate what she's done, even though I don't think she's like the world's best writer. I do think that the stories that she has written like up to this point are so great that I have faith that that's what's happening. And I think maybe that's why it fell so flat. That being said, the story, like as it was, there was a lot of really good things that I really loved about it. First of all, I fucking love Violet and Xaden. I saw some stuff on like Instagram reels because I have a lot of like book talk. I'm not on TikTok, but I have like a lot of book talk stuff on my Instagram reels, and people were like, I'm so over Xaden and Violet. They're like the same shit over and over again. And I'm just like, I don't know, maybe it's the diehard romantic in me, but I'm like, yeah, they're in love and it's beautiful. Like, I'll never get tired of reading about how much they're obsessed with each other. I just won't. I just love every fucking second of it. I also felt like she really fleshed out the character of Riddick, who's been kind of a fun, like funny comedic relief side character for a long time. And I enjoyed like the beats that we got with him. I enjoyed a lot of the dragon stuff. I just love the world that she's built. And so like anytime I get to be in that world and experience new content in the world, I'm a pretty happy camper, which is why this book ended up getting a higher rating than it would have if it was like its own standalone thing. I think there, like some of the things that fell flat for me was the fact that like it seems that she sort of has this theme of killing like a large secondary character at the end of each of these books, and those death scenes in the first 2 books like gutted me and shook me to my core. That didn't happen in this book. I was anticipating that someone was going to die because she's not afraid to kill off characters, which I appreciate, but the characters that she chose to kill off, I'm just like, I wasn't like emotionally rot the way that I was in the first 2 books. She also ended it on a cliffhanger, and that is killing me. But I also just didn't feel like as like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to wait years for the next one as I did with the first 2. I don't know how to explain it. I think that it was just kind of a flatter story in general. But I am also comparing it to 2 of my favorite stories, of my adult life. So I was trying to be objective, but it's hard. I just really love this world. And so she's always going to get a high rating for me until she really fucks something up. And so for me, this was a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, the next 3 books I read 3 romances back to back. I mean, almost all of these books are in some way or another a romance book. February is Valentine's Day month. It felt like an appropriate month to just really dive in and focus on my romance reading. So the next book I read was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I've read books by Emily Henry in the past. I think my favorite by her is Happy Place. Happy Place is great because there's a lot I like. I like the way that she writes her female characters. I also love the way that she writes banter, and all of that stayed super true in Funny Story. Happy Place is great because the location that she chose for it, the kind of New England summer vibes. I grew up in New England and I just really resonated with it. But Funny Story had pretty much all the hallmarks of what I love about Emily Henry's writing, primarily just a well-rounded female main character and extremely witty banter that I just cannot get enough of. The reason that I like a lot of these more popular romance authors, A, they're popular, and so I don't know, I just read a lot of their books, but B, they just encapsulate this feeling that I might actually genuinely be addicted to. This my heart is just so full when I read a romance. I love everything about knowing that 2 characters are going to end up together in some way, and all of the star-crossed destiny moving around and just yearning for them to be together. That feeling is hard to describe, but it's why I love reading these books so much. I guess I'm a hopeless romantic. I don't know. But it's just I just love reading about 2 people falling in love more than anything else in the world. I love the parts of the books where they don't know that they're in love, but we know that they're in love. I'm just it's frustrating and fun and exciting. And there are a couple of authors that really just nail that shit every single time and then make the payoff worth it when they do end up getting together, because sometimes you can get all of those feelings and then the characters get together and you're like, okay, it's over, but sometimes an author can get them together and you're just still so excited for the characters because you feel really connected to them. And I think that's what Emily Henry does really well. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I said that. The next book I read was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Now, you guys know I've had this long list of queer romance novels that I've been trying to get to because I read a bunch of queer romance novels last year. If you guys saw my book videos last year, that were terrible. And I just want to read a book about 2 women falling in love that's not fucking boring. So tons of you guys recommended the author Casey McQuiston to me. And I'm so excited that you did. This was my very first book that I ever read by her, and I'm obsessed. I'm so happy I started with One Last Stop. I also gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I almost always give a romance book 5 out of 5 stars, but let me tell you what I specifically liked about this one. First of all, queer love. We love when 2 women fall in love. There's literally nothing better in the world. I always like when I can personally, really viscerally get involved with the story. And there were a bunch of things that I personally really related to. First of all, the main female character was a little chubby bisexual living in New York City. And I just, hello, have I ever lived in New York City? No, my husband's from New York City, so I've been there a lot. She was originally from New Orleans, where I, of course, did live for 6 years. And there were some descriptions of New Orleans that were so micro-specific to the city that I'm like, if you didn't live there, I don't know if you would understand half of these references. But I did live there, and I loved it. I loved just the vibe that she set, the queer representation was incredible. More than anything, though, I just really loved the story. I loved that there was a story beyond the romance. The romance was almost secondary to this larger time travel mystery that was going on. I loved both the main female characters. I thought they were both written really well. I had a good understanding of who they were, and I desperately wanted them to get together. And I had that yearning, excited feeling while I was reading their story of them trying to get together. but I also was super intrigued by the mystery, and it kept me going even after, like, because the characters kind of got together earlier in the book, which can kill a romance, but didn't in this case because there was a larger plot afoot. And also there were incredible, like, side characters that I was also very interested in. So 5 out of 5. Cannot wait to read more Casey McQuiston. If you guys are familiar with her, if you're one of the people that recommended her to me, let me know what your favorite book by her was, because I feel like this was a great place to start, but I, like, cannot wait to read more. Okay, I promise that not every book I read this month got 5 out of 5 stars, but the next one did again, and it was Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. I feel like I maybe have now read every book that, I know I haven't. She's written a lot of books, but I've read a lot of Tessa Bailey. She's just another one of those authors, similar to Emily Henry, but very different. Like, similar in that she's a romance writer that I love, but different in that her writing style is totally different. But just really does a great job of encapsulating that, whatever that is, that romance yearning feeling that I love reading. Tessa Bailey is one of those authors that, like I said, I've read so much of her and I love everything she does. I think the one weakness with her writing that I don't always appreciate is, like, some of her more, spicy scenes are always a little aggressively straight. Maybe it's just because I read this one after I read a queer romance novel, but just a little like, stop talking, like, to the man, I always want to say. I don't know. That being said, I didn't actually feel that way too much about Hook, Line, and Sinker. It's actually the second book in, like, what's the first one called? I read the first one so long ago, I can't even tell you, but it's like the series that she did about the fishermen, on the West Coast and the girls from LA. I really liked this one. I don't have too much to say about it. If you like romance and you like Tessa Bailey, this is just another, like, fantastic read by her. I read this book in, I want to say, under 3 hours. I am a very fast reader. I always have been. But, like, I just literally zoomed through Tessa Bailey books. Like, I almost wish it took me longer to read because I enjoyed it so much. But they read like water. I don't know how to explain it. They're not challenging. They're just fun. I can read a book faster when I get that feeling because, like, I am, like, it's like a high. I'm, like, addicted to it. I, like, need to see it through. I need the characters to get together. I need to finish it. So, yeah, I don't know. To me, that is always the sign of a good book. The writing quality or whatever aside, I honestly, like, I'm not enough of, like, a literary critic to tell you, like, about too much about that. All I can tell you is the vibes, and the vibes were good. All right, and that is the end of the standalone romances that I read in February. From this point forward, the last 6 books that I read this month, or last month rather, were all the part of the same series. I did, as I said I would, start the Zodiac Academy series, mostly on the recommendation of Kenzie, and I went on a fucking journey with this series. Now, I'm not done with it, so don't fucking say anything about how it ends. I'm currently reading the 7th book, but I read the first 6 in February, so let's talk about it. I want to break each one down individually, but I genuinely do not know if I can because I read them all so fast back to back that they all, like, blended into one ginormous book to me, but I'll do my best. Here's what I can say. I just would give them, like, little stars on Goodreads as I was going. So I gave the first book, The Awakening, 2 stars. I gave the second book 3 stars. The third book, 4 stars. The fourth book, 4 stars. The 5th book, back down to 3 stars. And the 6th book, 5 stars. That kind of tells a story of, I did not like the first book. I liked the fantasy of it and I liked some of the characters, but overall I gave it 2 stars because it just felt like I was reading the story of these 2 girls who were just getting, like, beaten the fuck up by everybody around them. And it was really, like, truly depressing as hell. If you're just getting into the series and you read this first book, like, I kind of didn't want to keep going. But Kenzie told me to read the 3rd book. And she's like, if you're not hooked by the 3rd book, then be done. So I decided to keep true to that promise. And I read the 2nd book. And again, I can't exactly remember, like, where one ends and one begins, but I do remember, like, the 2nd book was marginally more interesting. I also, like, I just start to get really invested in characters. And the thing I think I remember liking about the 2nd book is that the first book is told totally from the point of view of the 2, like, main female characters, and, like, kind of back and forth between them, their sisters. The 2nd book, rather, you start to get more point of view characters. And I liked that it kind of expanded the point of view of the story. And you start to kind of understand people's motivations. That being said, I still felt like in the 2nd book, like, we're just beating these poor girls up for no reason. Excuse me, I need water. But I promised Kenzie that I would read the first 3 books. So after giving the 2nd book 3 stars, because I liked it marginally better than the first one, I decided to read the 3rd one, which is, that you guys know, what's that one called? The Reckoning. That gets 4 stars. Here's where, at the 3rd book, I kind of made my mind up about this series, and I've sort of kept this opinion as I've continued reading them, which is I love so many of these character arcs. And, you know, every book just expands like the amount of characters that get a point of view chapter. And there is so much movement in like the storyline, and there's so much movement in the character arc of each character that I am just invested. I absolutely need to know how it all shakes out. And that's pretty much what Kenzie said would happen, and she was totally right. Now I am, you know, I'm on the 7th book, like I said, and like it's crazy because I was texting Kenzie, I kind of been texting Kenzie about it throughout because she's read them all, and she's always like, oh, what characters do you like, not like, and I gotta say, like, I remember, if you're familiar with the series, there's no spoilers here, but in the first couple books, I was like, I fucking hate Seth, right? Like one of the guys. I was like, I hate him. He's the worst. I'm so annoying, and I just hate him. And now I'm like, if they kill Seth, I will fucking. Like, I love him so much. It's crazy. Just like, there's just been great character arcs. And I feel like because there are so many characters and there are so many fresh points of view that keep switching back and forth, like every time I get really bored of like Darcy and Lance, they switch to Tori and Darius. And every time I get really bored of Tori and Darius, they switch to like Geraldine and Max. And like, I just, you know, there's a lot of love stories going on there. It's like, it started as like a weird urban fantasy and it kind of turned into a high fantasy. All of that I love. And the thing that Kenzie said that I guess I'm going to repeat for you guys here is that it's just very camp. It's just so wildly stupid in so many ways that I've kind of found myself like originally hating that and now absolutely fucking loving it. Like Faybook, right? Like Facebook for fairies, like Fayflix, Netflix for fairies. Like that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen. And I'm obsessed with it. Like all of the fucking hashtags, all of the social media stuff. Like it's so dumb, but you can pry this series out of my cold dead hands because I'm now fully, completely invested. I gave the most recent book 5 stars because like I couldn't, again, tell you where like one book starts and one book ends. All I can tell you is that I would die for these characters that I originally hated. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you're interested in reading Zodiac Academy, stick it out to the 3rd book. It was the best advice that I could have been given because truly it's becoming one of my favorite series. And I know that they have like a bunch of prequel novels and like alternate points of view novels and short stories. And after I'm done reading like the core 9, I am genuinely going to look into them because like I am going to be sad when this is over. Like very sad. I read the first 6 so fast. I'm kind of trying to slow down with the last 3 because the idea of not being with these characters is breaking my heart. I mean, I feel that way anytime I get really invested into a good book, like with all of the romance novels I read this month. Like I always, by the like midpoint, I like know that eventually it'll be over and these imaginary characters will no longer be with me in my head, and that always makes me sad. I guess, what do they call that? A book hangover? Like I get those a lot. But I think because there are so many books in this series, I am like really I might truly genuinely be wrecked when I'm done with it. And to think I gave the first book 2 stars. And you know what? Like in hindsight, looking back now, I stand by that. The first book is not good. It's a terrible introduction into the world. And if you didn't have a friend like goading you on, I just simply don't know how most people make it past it. But I'm so glad I did because it's ending up being a just really fantastic story. That being said, it's like, how much can these poor like main female characters go through? Like they've been through so much, and I feel like every book something tragically horribly new happens to them, and I'm like oh, it's like really a lot. But I think the way that, like I said, that the authors kind of move past that is they just have enough like different characters to keep me kind of invested when it feels like it's been too much for the first, for the main core characters. I don't know how else to explain that. But yeah, I think the world, like the fleshed out world, like their powers and their orders and like the hierarchy of the kingdom and the history, it's all very well thought out. I enjoy the world. Even the silly, stupid academy, social media stuff, like the crazy, like Pegasuses piercing their dicks. I'm like, what the fuck am I reading? I'm obsessed with it. Like, I don't know. It's so stupid and it's so good. And I'm glad I've started reading it. So that's everything I read. I don't think I said the authors of the Zodiac Academy series. I didn't write them down. Let me look. I know it was written by 2 different people. Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. Yeah, it was like co-written. Anyway, that being said, that's everything I read in February. So let's talk about March. I'm going to finish the Zodiac Academy series. And like I said, I'm trying to kind of slow down. First of all, I'm not sick anymore and I'm back at it with like constant scheduling stuff. So I'm not going to read 10 books in March. I'm going to go for my usual 3 to 5. So I have 3 books left to read in the Zodiac Academy series. I'm currently halfway through the 7th book. Depending on how bad my book hangover is when I finish the last one, I may just read like the prequel books or, like I said, the short stories. That's definitely a potential. But let me just tell you what I have currently on hold in my Libby app, because other than that, and by the way, all the Zodiac Academy books are on Kindle Unlimited, so I haven't had to wait because I have Kindle Unlimited. That being said, on my Libby, I have Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake and First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. So that's what I'm currently waiting for on Libby. Ideally, they become available in March. So if those become available, I'll read those. But I think mostly I'll be finishing up the Zodiac Academy series. And I just truly want to know. No fucking spoilers. Please don't ruin this for me. I'm really enjoying this journey. But what do you guys think of the Zodiac Academy if you've read it? I know I had a couple of comments of people saying like, oh boy, get ready. And you were right. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's been my reading journey. This is a longer one than usual because I read so many books. But like 6 of the books I read were basically one big giant book, like I said. And that's all I got for you guys. If you have any recommendations for books, knowing like you have given me great recommendations in the past, so I'll always take it. Keeping in mind that I primarily enjoy romance. I'll enjoy a fantasy every once in a while. I like things with a little bit of spice. I don't like instant love. I like a slow burn, and I like lesbians. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. I love you oh so much. Bye.